get started. Welcome, 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 everyone. As Adriana, Isis, everybody's saying, our hearts are about to explode out of joy and of pride. And just, seeing all of you coming here today, thank you so much for joining us in such an extremely exciting day. We have a packed hour for you with many, many new findings, and you will be the first ones to know about this, and we cannot wait to share all of this with you all around collective giving. And to get us all started, I'm going to pass it to Isis. Oh, again, I know my name is there, but for those of you that don't know me, my name is Sara Lomelin. I'm the CEO of Philanthropy Together, and I'm here with this amazing group of people, and we'll be talking more about our team, our brain trust, and everybody. But Isis, get us started, please.
Thank you, Sara. Hi, everybody. I'm Isis. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Philanthropy Together. It's really just such a pleasure and a privilege to be here. To start, we wanted to just ground everybody. I think you all are already collective giving enthusiasts, but for those who may be coming into this space new, what is collective giving? Collective giving involves many individuals coming together, pooling their resources, which we very intentionally define not just as money, but as all 5 T's of philanthropy: your time, your talent, your treasure, your testimony, your ties, bringing those resources together along with your knowledge and your network and your heart and your soul, and coming together to support a cause or an issue or an individual or an organization that's collectively chosen by the group. That's what collective giving is, and the spirit in the chat is what that feels like in real life. Typically, it involves democratic decision-making, that community and connection, lots of learning and engagement, and the findings that we'll talk about today really showcase the powerful theory of change behind collective giving as a model. To start, we wanted to take you all the way back to the last research that happened in 2016 and how that birthed the launch of Philanthropy Together. Sara?
Yes, some of you may remember that back in 2016, the Collective Giving Research Group, and I just saw Jason's name in the chat, did this amazing landscape research. And they saw that at that point, there were about 1,600 giving circles in the US that had given out $1.3 billion in the last 20 years and involved around 150,000 people. So that was the spark to just ignite a group of giving circle leaders, giving circle network leaders to get together at the end of 2017 with a gift from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We got together to dream big. And during 3 days, we bounced ideas, we brainstormed, and we decided that we needed something, but we didn't know what we needed. So we embarked in a full co-design project during a year. And Isis, tell us more about that year.
Yeah, it was a really fun, packed year. We had more than 100 people involved in the process to co-design Philanthropy Together and what the goals were. You mentioned Jason in the chat. Jason helped us consider how to reach, or what that scale model would be to reach those big goals. But beyond the scale, we were also just as focused on how do we help strengthen the existing movement of collective giving groups all around the country, and then after COVID hit, all around the world. And we're so excited to see everything that's happened in the past few years. It was our 4th birthday yesterday, so we're still a new-ish organization, but lots has happened, and we're excited to see this research come to life.
So our goals when Philanthropy Together started were pretty bold, and we were not counting with a pandemic in the middle of it. So the goals for Philanthropy Together was, okay, in 5 years, we want to have, or to count, 3,000 giving circles in the US that will involve 350,000 people in collective giving. And we are going to mobilize $1 more billion. Those were very big goals. So from the very beginning, we have been having these goals in the back of our mind, and we wanted to start, this research back again, right? So it just made sense for us for Philanthropy Together to commission this research. And the very first person that we thought about was the brilliant Adriana Loson-Ceballos, whom I love. And, you know, Adriana is a founder of A Given Circle herself. She wrote her PhD dissertation around collective giving. So who better than Adriana to really lead this work? Also, you know, Adriana had been leading the research with the Latino Community Foundation about the relationship between being part of collective giving groups and civic engagement and wellness and mental health. So, and Adriana was part of that co-design project in 2019. So we, you know, we involved Adriana, and then how did Michael came into the picture, Isis?
Yeah, well, the Collective Giving Research Group was housed at the Dorothy A. Johnson Center for Philanthropy. Jason was the old W.K. Kellogg Community Philanthropy Chair, and then Michael Layton took that charge, and we're so happy he did. And so that was a natural partnership on that end. And we're so excited to have worked so closely with Michael and with Adriana on this work. We wanted to thank our funders really quickly for this effort, and then we'll dive into the methodology.
Yes, thank you to these four funders, because without their support, this landscape research wouldn't be done. And also I want to thank everybody that participated in this project, every single person that filled out the survey, and a big thank you to all the Philanthropy Together team too. And then I'm going to hand it to Michael and Ilyasa.
Incorrect. You're going to pass it to me.
Oh, sorry, Adriana. I'm going to pass it to you.
No, I wanted to introduce a little bit about our methodology and just say that, like, it's been very exciting to partner with this constellation of folks, and it's been an honor to be able to do this because you know, it's not a typical research project. We really started off with two values and intentions that at every single juncture of decision making, we went back to it and said, like, what is our North Star? And our North Star was really that we wanted to produce research that was useful to the collective giving movement. As Sarah and Isis just shared, like, the last research project brought us here, right? Like, we didn't want to just produce some research that wasn't going to drive change, awareness, and resources to all of the things that we're doing. But the other thing was that we really wanted to be intentional about making pauses all along the research design to make sure that we were hearing from a wide range of experiences and voices, so that what we were able to share with you all today was that representation of that energy and those voices and the diversity that we've seen in the movement for over a decade. And so with those two goals, we did a lot of data collection, and I'm going to pass it over to Michael to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you so much, Adriana. First, I have to add a word of thanks to my partners who are on this call, and of course, my amazing colleagues at the Johnson Center for Philanthropy here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They have gone above and beyond in everything that they've done in making this beautiful report and getting it out there, the editing, the design, and I will be forever grateful for that support. The other thing I want to do is, well, two more things. A quick shout out to my Michigan people that I've seen popping up, and mis amigos y amigas de México que están presentes. Saludos. So thank you so much for attending. And then finally, I want to acknowledge, you know, the elephant in the room. I am different from the other people that are on this call. I think it's pretty obvious. You know, some of you know, I don't have a long background in giving circles. I was new to this. So I think that's probably the most important way in which I am different from the other folks on this call. So that and probably being a man, for those who didn't notice that, going with he and him. So in terms of the numbers up here, they're a testament to the hard work that went into this. We did 2 national surveys, one that was aimed at the leaders of giving circles and collective giving groups. And we got about over 500 of those back about how collective giving groups operate. We also did a survey of members of collective giving groups and participants We got over 1,400 of those back. And that really illuminated why people joined, what they got out of joining, who they were. And in addition to that those quantitative numbers, we also complemented it with interviews and focus groups. And that really gave a depth and nuance to the work. We conducted 21 interviews with leaders, 29 focus groups with participants in giving circles that gave an incredible richness to the findings. So rich, in fact, we decided to put an additional section in the report with a selection of those quotations in their own words. And although it's at the very end of the report, it's really front and center in terms of our deepening our understanding of this movement. That red circle at the top of the screen over there is not IRB complaint, it is compliant. And that's very important at a university. The IRB is the independent review board. And what that body does is make sure that research, especially with human subjects, with animals, is conducted in an ethical way. And that all research participants are clear about their rights, their privacy, their data is guarded. And in all cases where we've asked people for quotations and they're named, they've given their explicit permission to have their names and affiliations used. The other important part of this that we've alluded to are the 39 people in the Brain Trust of Philanthropy Together. And with that, I'll invite our dear partner in this work, Ilyasa, to comment on the role of the Brain Trust.
Thank you, Michael. And I just want to say, looking at, the screen right now, seeing all of these numbers, like, y'all, more than 2,000 voices contributed to this research. That is huge. And it's so beautiful because we all bring our unique perspectives, our unique models, approaches to collective giving. And so I'm just really excited and proud that I was able to be a part of this. And we're also really grateful for Adriana and Michael's commitment to ensuring that the diversity of this movement really shined through. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without the support of our network Brain Trust. And so Network Brain Trust, it's a group of 20 Giving Circle networks, the folks that you see here on the screen. And they're from all around the world, and they advise how we showcase the Giving Circle field at large, and how we grow, strengthen, and sustain this movement. And in case you don't know, a Giving Circle network is, a Giving Circle network convenes a community of giving circles or collective giving groups around a shared identity, an interest, locale, or a model. And so Brain Trust was involved in the landscape research every step of the way, from providing feedback on the survey design, to promoting survey participation, to helping identify potential focus group participants. Some of them themselves were interviewed as part of this study. And Brain Trust was also key in bringing us all together today. Some of you probably learned of this webinar from one of these organizations. And so a big thank you to our network Brain Trust for their partnership and their leadership. Another thing that Brain Trust was key in was capturing a snapshot of this movement, which in the report, you'll see it referred to as the census. And to help us really understand the scale of this movement, we needed to find information on as many collective giving groups as possible. And so Brain Trust helped us by providing lists of their members. And then additionally, we have the Global Giving Circle Directory, which played a big part. And it's the only place you can go to find giving circles near you. The Global Giving Circle Directory is built by Grapevine, a member of Brain Trust, and Philanthropy Together. And we were able to download the data that groups input themselves with how much they've donated and how many members they have. And the last part of our census work involved media tracking. Showcasing the field of collective giving is a core focus area at Philanthropy Together, and we track every mention of collective giving, Giving Circle, social venture partners, and like you name it, we're probably tracking it if it's related to collective giving. And we went through the past 3 years of news stories since Philanthropy Together launched in 2020, and we found articles on grant announcements and cross-checked it against this information from Brain Trust and the directory, and that's where we were able to land on one of our biggest findings in the report. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Isis to kind of talk more about the report.
Yeah, so the report is dropping soon, and in it you will find these key things. There are 5 main findings. We're going to go through all of them today at a very high level, give you a taste for some of what we found. We have a new section of typology and archetypes that I had the privilege of helping to develop, and I'll talk about that at the end. We also have a few closer looks. We're looking specifically at geography and at sort of the impact of COVID on collective giving groups. So those are 2 inserts inside the full report. And what Michael was sharing, that in their own words are all literally dozens of pages of additional quotes because we couldn't keep them out. There's such rich stuff there that we hope you can use in your own work in this field. And without further ado, should we get into it? Adriana, let's dig in.
I'm not going to pull a Michael. I was on mute, but I'm not anymore. I'm so excited to dig in, y'all. Like, this is really exciting stuff, and it builds on some of the previous research that we shared at the beginning of the call. So I'm going to start with the very first major area of findings. As we suspected, collective giving is democratizing and diversifying philanthropy. So what does that actually mean? Well, what I want to start by saying is that it is a very, very rapidly growing movement. We found in our survey results that 61% of people who joined the movement joined since 2016. So the type of people that are coming in really because of reduced barriers to access, because of different opportunities in their communities, because of different challenges that are being faced. And what we're finding is that this model is really accessible. It's really able to engage a whole new set of philanthropists that had previously been engaged. And one of the things that we found was that 50% of groups have a lower barrier to entry of $500, but that people are giving closer to $3,000 through their groups every year, and that at least 39% of people are giving an additional $3,000 to the groups that are funded. And so what really is exciting is that with the average member being in part of a collective giving group for 7.5 years, that's a lot of individual giving to be able to influence. Like, that is just really able to change the context in which frontline leaders are fundraising. And so it's really exciting to see the growth and the longevity of people who are joining this movement. So I will go into the next slide because I want to get to the big numbers. As I've mentioned, previous landscapes have been essential for us to be able to capture these one-time screenshots or snapshots of collective giving in the United States. And what we've been able to see is that with every single landscape, there is a growth in the number of groups, in the amount of money that they're moving, and in the number of people that are part of these groups. And so while both of the previous landscapes that are referenced on the screen, they tried to go back as far as possible to be able to count all of these figures, we wanted to focus on the time since 2016. And more specifically, we wanted to look at 2017 to 2013, because that allowed us to look at the 2 years before the global pandemic, the 2 years of the first 2 years of the pandemic, and the 2 years that have happened since. And what we found was truly inspiring. We are beyond thrilled to open up our time here today with very, very exciting news. So I want the chat to feel like we're drum rolling collectively, please. Between 2017 and 2023, Ilyasa, do it.
All right, here we go.
Nearly 4,000 collective giving groups across the United States mobilized over 370,000 philanthropists, raising an astonishing $3.1 billion. This is a 140% increase since 2016 results in less than a third of the time. The magnitude of the movement's growth left me so shocked that we had to triple, and quadruple check all of that census work that Ilyasa said. And it just, I mean, like, I can't even, with how I was just so excited to see this unstoppable force. So I just want, Sara, can you just jump in and just say what your goals were and that we met them and exceeded them?
Yes, and I'm crying again because I was just chatting that our team at PHT has cried of joy many times about these numbers. When Adriana called me, I was driving and I had to park and, taking it in. Because as I mentioned 10 minutes ago, the goals were huge. The goals were 3,000 giving circles, mobilizing 350,000 individuals, and mobilizing $1 billion more. And the pandemic came into the middle. And these numbers are amazing. And it's all of you guys, all of you in the chat, and all the members of your giving circles, and all the people that we're not the cute people in philanthropy. When people say giving circles are cute, we're not cute. I mean, we are cute, but we're so powerful. We're such a powerful movement. So feel extremely proud of the work that your collective giving groups are doing.
Thank you so much. I will keep it going because I know that we're taking up some time. So I want to say the second part that gets me really stoked about this movement is that collective giving groups are overwhelmingly led by women. That's another thing that makes me very excited because 84% of the groups that responded said that more than half of their members identify as women. And for 60% of the groups, their entire membership was female. I love that we saw that 43% of groups came together around this shared identity of women. And we heard it in every single focus group and in every single interview where there was a woman present, that their collective giving group really helps them to foster a sense of sisterhood, of sorority, of solidarity, of belonging, that really allows for diverse voices and diverse lived experiences to come in and be heard. And when we think about the pivotal moment that we're in, where $30 trillion in assets are going to shift to women's hands, we can see how these spaces are essential, not just in amplifying the impact of women's voices, but the impact that women can have in philanthropy. Okay, let's keep going. All right. The other thing that is very exciting about how collective giving is diversifying and democratizing philanthropy is that it's changing the narrative around who is considered a philanthropist, right? So not only is it a very female-led movement, but in 2019, the results that we had showed that 19% of members identified as BIPOC. But since 2019, 28% of new members have been BIPOC. This shows a 50% increase in BIPOC representation over the last 4 years alone. And so when we hear about these efforts to build donor bases that represent the community served or that allow for the community served to be in these spaces, this is a great model of how to engage donors from marginalized communities. It really is breaking down the barrier between donor and recipient and showing us that, so many of these people, we heard it over and over again, didn't identify as philanthropists before they joined, but the moment they joined, boom, I'm a philanthropist. And so by the end, we heard that 87% of members identified as philanthropists, showing how this can be transformational. So I'll pass it over to Michael to talk about the second bucket of findings.
So thanks very much, Adriana. So what happens after this first finding? What happens when you democratize and diversify philanthropy? Well, what gets funded also changes. And that's what this next section is going to talk about. How collective giving groups center equity, how they focus on community-based organizations, and how they're deeply invested in place-based philanthropy. And those things, those values are truly transformative. So, for example, to start off with, 60% of Giving Circle group leaders reported that their groups have an explicit commitment to racial and ethnic equity in their groups. That's complemented by a similar level of commitment to gender equity within groups. And nearly 40% prioritize funding communities that have been disproportionately affected by inequitable systems. And they have these values because members come to collective giving. 80% of people who join collective giving do so because they cite the gap between what traditional philanthropy, institutional philanthropy usually supports and what they want to see funded. So what happens is this alchemy of people looking for a change with that desire to change, and when they hit collective giving groups, those groups meet those needs. And that's what really powers the movement and powers that longevity of 7.5 years worth of membership. And here's a table with a lot of information on it. So you'll get the report shortly. It's going to be dropped not a moment before we're off screen, but shortly thereafter. So we ask groups, what are your criteria for selecting potential recipient organizations? And they could pick the most important ones to them. It wasn't just pick one, it was pick the ones that really matter the most. And as you can see here, it is a values-driven movement. People come together out of their values, and they want to see those values and interests reflected in the groups that they're supporting. Almost 90% of groups driven by values. And that support for marginalized groups that I've already spoken about, the element of leadership, that connection that groups are serving and led by people in community, that there's a feedback loop, that deep connection to community is a very important central aspect of how collective giving works in the United States. And the next element here, really complemented by a beautiful quotation from our dear friend Marsha Morgan, 75% of groups who have a racial majority other than white focus on funding their own ethnic and racial groups. So what does that mean? It means that people of color are essentially mobilizing resources on behalf of, and channeling that to their communities. And as this beautiful quotation points out, it's a very distinctive kind of connection because organizations are receiving support from people who look like them. And that is truly transformative. And those connections lead to that expansion. We're not just talking about treasure. Certainly money is important, but we're talking about infusing board leadership. We're talking about the amazing talents that these givers bring to their groups, the ties and testimony. And they might sound like kind of soft, fluffy things, but the fact is, when you spread the word about successful organizations, you give them money, you serve on their board, it drives the expansion and success of these groups in important and inspiring ways. And when we talk to people in the focus groups and interviews, that lesson was driven home time and time again. And what this does essentially is center generosity and acting in abundance. And here I have some of my fellow men joining us from the Denver African American Philanthropists. You might think that DAP stood for Dapper because these are some handsome looking guys and they're well dressed, better than I have to confess. And this is all about changing the face of philanthropy. There's one story, and my friends on this call know I'm too much of a storyteller, but it's worth taking a pause. That was shared about a Muslim men's giving circle. And that giving circle was very concerned about violence against women. And when they were made aware of an organization locally that was in need of support, those men banded together and said, this is something very important for us to support. And in doing so, it raised their consciousness and their solidarity. And that kind of bridging social capital is something that we're going to talk about in a moment. But before we get there, we have a map. Love my maps. And what this shows is the extent of the movement across the country and how deeply place-based philanthropy is. As Adriana loves to say, it is a hyper-local movement. 9 out of 10 giving circles draw their members from the same state, about 7 in 10 from the same county. So that idea of getting together, seeing each other, celebrating together, giving together is a critical aspect of the success of the movement. And being local means that giving circles can fund the organizations and causes that matter most to them, that they see up close, regardless of the size of the group or whether that group is supported by larger donors. And that's how collective giving expands what gets funded.
And Michael,
Now,
I just want to jump in there on this map and just say that, as you all can see, some of these states have a ton of groups and some of them aren't there yet. And that really points to the fact that this research is showing, and past research has shown too, that there's so much potential for growth, especially here in the middle of the country and the South. There's just an amazing opportunity here. And of course, this landscape study was only in the US, but there's other efforts that should happen globally to do the same kind of mapping.
And I also want to jump in here because I also love me a good map. And to say that, like, shout out to, I saw Tony Bowen in the call. So shout out to Tony Bowen, exactly what you just said, Isis, about the geography that Fidelity is looking at. But also to say, yes, I say that this is a hyper-local movement with global roots. And I think that very often we forget or don't see the purpose of the connections between the neurons that exist. But I just wanted to also say that, like, collective giving has been in communities around the world and in cultures around the world throughout history. I mean, like, I know that for my dissertation, I found like groups that like of formerly enslaved people in the United States. Like, it's just all over. And I just wanted to also elevate that those international roots are also seen in the circles that we were able to highlight. And then
well, and because everybody's jumping, and we'll go back to Michael in a second. Just a little bit, another plug-in about the global movement, right? The beauty now is now we're all connected. We're all connected, and there are collective giving groups in the US learning from international groups learning from, it's a beautiful ecosystem where we all share and we all are generous with, our practices, right? What works for me, I'm going to share it with you to see if you can take it. So yes, back to Michael.
Now, I don't have cable TV. What is it called? QVC, that network that is all ads where they sell stuff. I feel like I'm in one of those ads, and we ought to be selling something now at a ridiculously low price. So that's our story with the map. We're going to move on to the third major area of findings, and that is collective giving pushes the bounds of how philanthropy is practiced. And again, it does this in a number of ways. We've talked some about the harnessing of the 5 T's, also how collective giving creates spaces for donor education and organizing, and then how collective giving practices and embracing trust-based philanthropy. It's almost essentially in the DNA of what it means to be in a giving circle to do that. So we got a lovely bar graph here. And what that does is to highlight the impact of joining a collective giving group and how it influences the practice of all 5 T's. So your ability to understand community, that is impacted in a very positive way. The strength of relationships that you have is impacted in a powerful way. And as I mentioned before, we'll talk about that importance of social capital and define that jargon in a heartbeat here. How much you donate, and then how you serve on boards, whether you serve on boards, and how you advocate for issues. All these wonderful effects by joining together collectively, speaking with others about what causes are important to you, channeling your resources to that, and thinking that that's a great first step, but what's the next one? It inspires people to take that next step.
And before you change the slides, I just want to remind people, 7.5 years is the average membership, right? So like the ability to understand your community, to understand philanthropy, to donate, to like, it is so powerful as a model to influence and change the philanthropic landscape in your community. It's like just this bar chart makes me very happy. I'll stop interrupting.
And to think about that, I mean, having instruments like GoFundMe, these web-based approaches, they're great, and they help people be generous. They help fund causes, but the human connection, doing this collectively, is really the secret to the power, I think, of collective giving, and the reason that we're all so excited on this call, and that so many of you have joined and are. I'm afraid you're going to break the chat with the number of people that are participating and sharing their thoughts. I'd love to have that happen, to see what the limitations of Zoom are for us today. So moving on, as we were talking about, this aspect in particular of donor education, that 2/3 or 3/4 of people that participate feel that their participation increases their understanding of philanthropy. And not only that, but also their understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of some giving circles emphasize bonding social capital, being like-minded, and others emphasize a diverse representation of groups. And within those spaces, uniformly, there's a value that's been placed. And we heard this again and again in the focus groups and interviews about what an opportunity this represents to talk about the value of inclusion, to talk about the value of belonging, and how the exercise of generosity opens people up to learning these sorts of practices. And then finally, with a wonderful quotation from our friend Guff, what happens is collective giving groups start to practice trust-based philanthropy. As I said, it's in their DNA. One small aspect of this is providing general operating or unrestricted funds. 3/4 of groups report that they do that. But more importantly, in the testimony that we got from the people that we interviewed, this idea of acting shoulder to shoulder with frontline leaders, those who've been left out, feeling like they have the support, people have their back in their communities. There's a mutual learning that takes place from that kind of philanthropic engagement that goes beyond a click and moves into this kind of personal relationship, which is so enriching for people and helps establish a more horizontal relationship between who's a giver and who's a receiver, and sort of bleed those lines together, where those that receive from a giving circle come back and say, I want to be part of this, and they become givers, and it becomes a circle in itself of giving and receiving.
I will take the mic back on that lovely note and move us over to the reason why I do this work. The next bucket of findings is really talking about how collective giving deeply impacts members themselves. And I just saw a note from Jason that makes me really happy to know that you are excited for this research as well, because you know, this previous research was something that I wanted to build on through my dissertation, and I wanted to explore particularly a link that was brought up in other research on how participation affects your level of civic engagement. And so I tried to find a link between maybe why people were joining, and what I found was that it was not so much why people were joining that affect the level of civic engagement. It really is the profound impact on members' overall wellness that was able to include personal agency and everything else. And so I'm just very grateful, and this is a full circle moment to go from my dissertation to this. And so I'm going to go quickly because I know that we are behind schedule, and just say that 55% of members said that their participation in their collective giving group positively impacted their ability to live a healthy life. 55%, and that includes physically, mentally, spiritually. And then of course, 83% said that their participation increased their confidence when taking action to change their communities. I'm going to keep it going. Collective giving groups foster belonging, purpose, and connection. It really makes me hopeful, y'all, that 91% of collective giving participants said that their sense of belonging to a community was positively affected by their participation. 91%. With the state of the world, that's very exciting. And 77% said that that their participation had positively affected their sense of purpose in life. And 78% reported a positive impact on their ability to live their values through collective giving. And I mean, this goes through all, like, I just think of all the feelings of isolation, the loneliness pandemic, the divisiveness in our community. Like, this is rebuilding our social fabric in a way that's very exciting. So I'm going to keep going and just say that, you know, when we talked about, when we had all the interviews and focus groups, like the number of people that said, I am going from, I was in a corporate foundation, now I'm in this, now I was in a nonprofit, now I'm a grantee, now I'm here. Like, the movement that comes in and out, infusing this movement is absolutely amazing. And what results is that people see one of the top benefits of participation as expanding their networks, as developing their leadership skills, and that 71% of respondents noted that their participation positively affected their access to resources and opportunities. We heard over and over how these spaces were sanctuaries for members to be authentic, to try out the stuff that their work wouldn't let them try out, to be able to bridge the personal and professional in ways that allowed for their authentic selves to shine. And so with that, I'm going to keep us moving and just say that the next bucket of findings, collective giving is a catalyst for social change. You know, like, people are transformed through their participation, and their groups, their partners, their communities are transformed as a result. And so I'll pass it over to Michael to talk about the stat on the screen on the next slide.
So for me, well, let's go one back, Ilyasa. So collective giving is a catalyst. For me, it's the secret sauce ingredients are on the package. It's collective. You come together to pool resources. It's giving, so you act in abundance. That is the title of the report, In Abundance, because we felt like those two words embodied so much of what collective giving is, the transformative impact that it has on people. And you're doing that in a group and establishing the bonds of trust. And as we'll see in the subsequent slides, as we've been highlighting all through this, those bonds within and between communities are so very important that activate collective giving groups as schools of democracy, and that spur deeper levels of civic commitment. We're going to power through these because we want to have time for the typology too. So moving along. We noted that 53% of members have the ability to engage in discussions with dissenting voices. How is it that happens? It's because more than half of groups opt for Democratic majoritarian, we'll fund this group because more than half of us think it's important. 27%, an amazing percentage, use a consensus-based approach where you have that give and take of arriving at a shared decision about who gets funded. A lot of the remaining groups have interesting processes that are too complex to be caught with those kinds of more binary options. And a shout out to all of the folks that answered the questionnaires and picked others so that they could explain what they wanted to share about their collective giving experiences. So in some cases, there's a nomination process. There's a reference back to people in the community so that marginalized groups and the voices of marginalized groups are respected and included in the decision to make a grant. So that in that process, as Sasha here highlights, you heal the world by giving together and with a conscious and intentional conversation. And we love that phrase from her. So, my friend.
I will power through the next section and just say that we are also building on previous research that exists on bonding and social capital. Bonding is really the capital, the social tissue between a group. And then bridging is really creating an opportunity for groups to connect between themselves. And so what we found was that 82% of groups joined to find that like-mindedness, those shared values, that community, which is, I mean, we've heard it over and over again from folks that were maybe in rural areas, that maybe had LGBTQ identities, that weren't welcomed in their family, that this is their chosen family, in, you know, like people who moved, people who retired, people who are starting a new career, like trying to find your home and your community was a very large drive. And 77% of groups acknowledge that there is some type of common affiliation. But what was really exciting to hear from the qualitative interviews that we did was really about how they, even within the same group, like it would be a women's group that would be like, we're missing a generation. Or they'd be women be like, we need more we need diversity in races. You know, like even within that bonding capital, there was the opportunity for more bridging capital to happen so that we could really see a mix of classes, races, genders, everything start to influence these collective decisions. So I'm going to keep going and just say that the civic engagement, yes, it happens. People are advocating more for the issues that they care about. They're more informed about the issues. They're listening to community voices. They are from the community. And when we talk about how to get people engaged in a moment where like everything seems so scary and daunting and overwhelming and hopeless, like this is getting people to roll up their sleeves with their neighbors and figure things out together. And so with that, I'm just going to keep us moving because ISIS's typology is amazing. So Isis, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. What incredible findings. Thank you to the chat for showing some love to all of those research, little stats and statistics, incredible work. One part that we really wanted to include is building on some of the typology work that even back in 2005, Angela Eikenberry had done, and then Jason, and then others. How do we really look at what it means to be a collective giving group today? And what does that typology look like? And what are some of the archetypes of the groups? This is not homogenous. We always say, if you know one giving circle, you know one giving circle. They're all so unique, but we have found several patterns. And this is really coming from a practitioner standpoint. Everyone at Philanthropy Together, I've been involved in this work since 2013. So really trying to take the research and the practitioner mind and put those together to inform a typology and a set of archetypes. So for the typology, we developed these three different pieces. The first bucket and category is the who and why, the membership characteristics and the purpose of the group. For any of you that are actually in this movement or looking to get involved, hopefully you can see this as little sliders. Do you want your community to be about networking or about belonging? Do you want the size of your group to be small or really large? In the report, you'll see that there are corresponding statistics from all of the research that really validate each of these sides of the spectra, but it shows how diverse the groups can be shaped in terms of their form and their function. The second figure that Ilyasa will put up here is the what and the where, the giving focus, the level of giving, the decision-making structure, who's included in that. This is things like how much money is there, whether that money is driven by the individuals, sort of through nominations or nominations from the community. This is about if the giving is going more traditionally towards classic nonprofits, or if it's more untraditional, giving through individuals or 501c4s or other investment opportunities. Is the geography hyperlocal or national and international? So you can see here all of these different pieces on the second one. And then the last piece of the typology is the how and the when. This is all the nitty-gritty stuff, the processes, the structures, the supports. How long will this group be around? We saw that stat of the 7.5 years, but there's also a lot of groups that are pop-up giving circle experiences that was popularized by Amplifier. There are many other models out there, whether the approach is about strategic philanthropy or trust-based philanthropy, whether it's volunteer-led or has paid staff. half. So you can see there's so many different ranges out there. And this is all in the report with further details. All of that then we codified into 7 key archetypes, and those are listed here on the next page. We're calling these Women Giving Big. These are the groups that is large, 100 plus. It's typically all women coming together. They're also giving big dollars, typically starting at 1,000 or more. That's that kind of group. We have crowd granting networks like the incredible 100 Who Care Alliance and the Grapevine Giving Network. These are also large scale groups, but they're more informal. They're giving smaller dollars. They're very hyper local in their work. We have belonging through identity groups. These are ones like the LCF Latino Giving Circle Network or the Community Investments Networks groups, APIPS groups, Amplifiers groups, Honeycombs groups, everyone who's really coming together because a sense of belonging through some facet of your identity is holding the group together. These are typically smaller. They're really focused on social change, giving all 5 T's. We have the organizing for social change groups. These are the ones who are really actively working towards social justice, that are switching power dynamics and how they're the purpose of what they're doing. We have community project microgranting groups. These are people like the Awesome Foundation that are coming together and fueling incredible creative projects in their communities, $1,000 at a time. We have live crowdfunding experiences like the Funding Network in the UK and globally that are bringing many people together who aren't in a community. They're seeing a bunch of pitches and then giving in the moment. And then we have a growing number of host-supporting groups. These are the ones that are connected to a nonprofit or some other affiliation. And so these archetypes, we have one example here on the next slide that just shows for one of these archetypes how they then go on all of those different spectra. So we hope that this is a really helpful way for you all to define your group. You might fall exactly into one of the archetypes, or you might change some of the spectra around to really classify your own group. And we hope this is additive to the field as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Sada to close us out.
Yes, thank you, Isis. Thank you, Michael and Adriana and Ilyasa. And yes, guys, I love all these questions. And now, you know, what you need to do, because there's a lot more meat in the report, is read the report. Go and read it. We're going to send you, well, I think we're sending, oh my God, it's in the chat. So you can go and dig and read and keep sending us your questions. We are going to collect all the Q&A and answer. You know, that's why we're not typing frantically to your questions, but please use this report. Think about how are you going to use this report to elevate your work? How are you going to get more members into your giving circle? How are you going to start new giving circles in your community? How are we going to, you know, talk about the work that our movement does? And I know in the next slide, Ilyasa, if we can talk a little bit about where do we go from here? And there's also a part in the report that talks about these, right? For newcomers, join a giving circle, start your own giving circles. Also, you know, there's room to grow. It's not all, oh yes, we got it. This is a journey. We have to keep moving more into trust-based philanthropy. There are still, you know, some practices that we can, you know, we can always be better. So integrate the ideas in the report to push your own work. For funders, you know, go and fund alongside a giving circle, fund giving circles, fund networks, fund the infrastructure as a whole. And researchers, we need you. We need more researchers to be doing this kind of work. I see in the chat a lot of shout outs about doing this internationally. We would love to do this at the global level. So please, we need all of you. And with that, Ilyasa, do you want to invite everybody?
Yes, I am. I would love to invite everyone to join us at We Give Summit. So we have the data, we have the research, it's here. The report is live. The link is out there. So now what's next? How do we take action? How do we like really take those next steps now that this report is here? And so We Give Summit will be held May 7th through 9th. It's 3 days. This year's theme is Activate Together. And like a big shout out to the Philanthropy Together team and our We Give Summit steering committee, because this year's agenda is all centered on the 5 T's of philanthropy. And we have 21 activations for folks to really take what we're learning from this research and putting it out there into communities all around the world. We have 3 keynote speakers: Deepa Iyer with Building Movement Project, Dan Pallotta, Baratunde Thurston. And so everyone, please join us on May 7th through 9th, and we'll drop a link in the chat to join us.
Isis, take us home.
Yeah, so we talked about the directory, but this is where it all lives. You can find information about all of these thousands of groups that exist out there. And if you have a collective giving group, claim your profile. Help us out in the future. Whoever does the next research, hopefully isn't me, but the next time that we can look at the data and have all of that directly from the collective giving groups on the call. So go and claim your profile. And as we close, we want to just ask you one last question. What is a takeaway, an aha, an insight, a question, an idea, something, an action that you're taking from this research? Put that in the chat as you say goodbye. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.